sure many of you know this already. Oh, there we go, recording in progress. I'm sure many of you know this already, but start at the beginning. What were they actually mining? The most common ore found in Mid Wales is lead ore. The top left picture there, argentiferous galena, which is lead sulfide with quite a bit of silver in it as well, a high silver content as well. That was the main mineral that was excavated here in the mountains of Mid Wales. We've also got zinc, or what the miners call black or blackjack, on the bottom there, which is a much darker shade of what we get with the lead ore. That's the zinc. And then copper, of course, on the right there, which leaves behind a nice blue stain when it oxidizes. Those are the three main ores extracted from Mid Wales: lead ore, zinc, and copper. These ores occur in near vertical fracture zones or lodes, veins that run through the mountains. This map here is a geological map showing the Pumlummon Mountains, just east of Aberystwyth, just in from the coast in the Cambrian Mountains. And those black dots, those black lines show the main veins or lodes which traverse the mountains. These fracture zones, these faults, contained varying amounts of lead, silver, copper, but they were also could be completely barren as well. It was complete potluck whether or not you would find any mineral. So lots of the people that came to this area, lots of the prospectors that came to this area would spend fortunes on excavating on these veins, on these lodes to try and make the fortunes. But sadly, more often than not, they would actually end up completely bankrupt, as did many of the companies that worked the mines in this area as well. The red dots show some of the main mine workings. You can see how they're all positioned on or near those lodes for obvious reasons. And if you say have a really famous productive mine such as Cwm Rheidol, just east of Devil's Bridge, bottom of the picture, you'd have lots of other companies coming along calling themselves East Cwm Rheidol or West Cwm Rheidol or South Cwm Rheidol, trying to tap on the fame of that neighbor, and quite often just trying to pull money out of these barren courses of ore underground. This is what it looks like underground. This is what a lode looks like. This picture was taken last year when my colleagues and I were surveying one of the mines in the Pumlummon Mountains. You can see above my colleague there that you can see this white staining. That's the course of the lode in the roof there, where the miners have followed it up to a considerable height in this chamber. This is known as a stope, where the ore is all extracted. Wherever that vein is productive and yields sufficient amounts of metal, you start stripping it all out, loading it into wagons or wheelbarrows, and then tramming it outside. Anyway, so we'll go through the history to give ourselves a platform on which to build this study. So mining in Mid Wales, lead mining in Mid Wales, is in fact the oldest mining industry, metalliferous mining industry anywhere in the UK. We have mines here at Cwm Rheidol, just east of Devil's Bridge, that date back to the Stone Age. So we're talking 7,000 years of exploiting minerals in Mid Wales, which is millennia earlier than some of the mines extracting coal in the south and slate in the north. So it really is quite a claim to fame, really, that Mid Wales has, in that we have these thousands of years, 7,000 years of mineral exploitation. Of course, during the Stone Age, smelting wasn't a thing yet. Metals weren't being smelted yet. So you may ask, what were they actually using the stuff for? Well, it was copper, malachite that was being extracted, and this would have been used as a pigment quite primitively during that time. From the early Bronze Age onwards, about 2500 BC onwards, we have the evolution of smelting. And of course, the Bronze Age, the miners got the copper from Mid Wales and the tin from Cornwall down South England to make the bronze. So Mid Wales and its miners played a very important role in the early industrialization of the United Kingdom. During that Bronze Age period, the miners that would have worked here were largely Irish, who would have traveled across the Irish Sea, straight across, landed in Mid Wales, quite simply. And we know that from studies that we've done of artifacts that we've found, gold artifacts that we've found at Cwm Rheidol, and we've done species IDs of that gold and that mineral, and it's come back as Irish in origin. and the Irish miners would have come straight across in search of alternative sources of copper, as their own mines in mid-Ireland would have been drying up around 1800 to 2000 BC. So that's the first little bit of immigration we've got really going on in mid-Wales on an industrial scale, was the Irish immigration during the early Bronze Age. This map here shows, well, I drew this map in 2019, so I'm going to show you the new and improved version at the end because it's been updated since then. But this was, as of August 2019, my understanding of the prehistoric mine sites in mid-Wales. Red dots are confirmed Bronze Age mines that we've been able to date through carbon dating evidence to the Bronze Age. Dates are on the sites. And then the green ones are sort of, those are my hit list, sites that we have suggestions or historical records that prehistoric artifacts have been found there, but we haven't actually found any evidence ourselves yet. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, is trying to find more evidence to really showcase how important Mid-Wales was in the earliest metalliferous mining enterprise known in the United Kingdom. The earliest workings would have mainly consisted of just opening trenches on the surface, quite primitively, following these courses of ore down that were found by prospectors, outcropping in stream beds or on cliffs, wherever the bedrock is exposed, basically. They would prospect in various areas, anywhere where the rock was shiny or glimmery or any minerals were exposed, they would start trenching on that on that course. And inevitably, it would start filling up with water once you get down to a certain depth, because as we all know, Wales is pretty wet. So one of the main developments which took place during round about the Roman times was the evolution of adits, or water tunnels, if you like. And these are your typical mine tunnels that are driven into the mountainside, essentially for access and drainage. They would drive these levels into the bottom of those open pits so that the water could drain out. The miners themselves could walk in that way, and then you'd carry on following the ore down. These early levels, we today call them coffin levels, because if you look at that one on the right, it is quite sinister in the shape of a coffin. And the reason behind this is because gunpowder hadn't been invented yet. Every inch of these levels had to be chiseled out by hand. And they would use anything from antlers, stag antlers, formed into wedges and chisels, stone hammers, stone tools and implements to pry the rock apart and to extend miles and miles and miles of tunnels in this fashion. The effort that went into making these was quite spectacular, just to get the water out of the mine so that they could persevere. And the picture on the left there, what I'm gawking at in that picture are 2,000-year-old chisel marks, which are still visible on that rock today, that were made during the Roman times. So these coffin levels are a great way of dating mines for which we have no records. We go underground, you see one of these, and you're thinking, right, straight away, you're thinking Roman, maybe at the very latest medieval, because from about 1600 on, we've got gunpowder coming into play. And that was thanks to the second of these two gentlemen. Now, in 1568, the first conglomerate, or the first company, if you like, organization, was set up to work the mines in mid-Wales on an industrial scale. And that was the Society of Mines Royal. And that was established by the last Tudor monarch, Queen Elizabeth I, basically to create a monopoly for the crown over all minerals, not just in Wales, but across the United Kingdom. The crown had exclusive rights to all metal ores, so that goes for lead, silver, zinc, whatever, under the soil all across Britain. And since mid-Wales had plenty of that, it was one of the areas that was focused upon. And the crown leased these mines to eminent gentlemen such as Sir Hugh Middleton, there on the left, and Thomas Bushell, guy on the right. Sir Hugh Middleton is most famous as having been the man behind bringing the first fresh water supply for the City of London. And the money that he used for making that supply apparently came from the wealth he gained from these mines right here in Ceredigion. On the right, Thomas Bushell went one step further and established a crown mint in Aberystwyth Castle. in 1638 or 1639, I forget which year exactly, during the late 1630s. And all the silver that was gained from mines such as Cwm Ystwyth, Cwm Erwyn, Talabont, lots of the mines around here, was taken to the coining mint in Aberystwyth Castle. Now, this straight away built Aberystwyth as a royalist base because of this mint, so that by the time of the English Civil War in the 1640s, 1642, Aberystwyth became a prime target for Oliver Cromwell and the parliamentarians. So you can say that the reason that Aberystwyth Castle is a ruin today is because of the mines, because it created and established Aberystwyth as a royal town, and therefore Oliver Cromwell came here and ticked it off his list quite literally and demolished the castle in 1649. Bushel's workings always interested me, and a few years ago I set off to try and find some of his workings in the Talabont area, just north of Aberystwyth, because there's written record of him having opened mines in this area, but nobody found any evidence of where these mines actually were. So my friends and I went through this field here on the left, looking for any sort of mine-related features, and found a shaft, a vertical shaft, going down and into the mountain. So we abseiled down this, and we landed about 100 feet down in this superb coffin level that you see on the right there. Now, that thing is no more than 9 inches wide and about 4.5 feet high. So it is an absolutely tiny, tiny, tiny little coffin level. You can barely turn around in it. And straight away after seeing that, I was thinking, this looks identical to other levels from the same period that you can find in Germany. And the answer to that intriguing little factoid is that Bushell and Middleton and Queen Elizabeth I herself commanded German miners to move to Mid Wales, specifically to North Ceredigion, to help boost the mining industry here in the 1640s. So now we get to our second wave of immigration. We have the Irish in the Bronze Age. Now we've got the Germans in the 1640s. And many German families actually settled in this area and helped work in these mines. So what we'd basically found on that bright summer's day in 2019 or whenever it was a German level, the coffin level, driven using hand tools only, 400 years old, underneath a little village in North Ceredigion, which no one would really think existed underneath their feet. So time moved on. After the Civil War, we enter a bit of a dark age where there's very little information available about the people that worked in Mid Wales's metal mines. How active were the mines at all? However, there's this lovely engraving, that was taken, that was created in 1670, that date right, in a book called Fodena Regales by Sir John Pettus. And this depicts the mine working at Darren Mine, which is again just north of Aberystwyth, clearly in full vigor, with buckets of ore, panniers of ore being loaded onto the horse on the bottom foreground there. And we can even see Cardigan Bay with a ship out in the bay in the background. During this time, the main port for exporting ore was Aberdyfi, north of Aberystwyth wasn't established as a lead exporting port until the latter half of the 18th century. Prior to that, most exportations took place from Aberdyfi. Even though it was a bit further to the north, it was an already established port. So that's an interesting little migration that took there as Aberystwyth grew as a town, as an industrial centre during the 18th century. The end of the 17th century, just before we come into the 18th, we have a huge turning point, which is very, very important to talk about because it completely changed the future of British metal mining, and it was entirely thanks to Sir Carberry Price, the landowner of the Gogarthan estate. Once again, just north of Aberystwyth. Everything seems to happen around here. And what happened was that one of his shepherds discovered ore, quite by chance, lead ore, north of Talabont at a place called Bulcharescair here in 1690. And Sir Carberry Price challenged that crown right, which had been in existence right back from the Tudor times, where the crown had monopoly over all mines. And through his vigorous campaigning and friends in the right places, he actually managed to have an act passed in Parliament in 1693 called the Mines Royal Act. And this basically relinquished the crown monopoly over British metal mines, provided they were not silver or gold. The Crown retains those rights. However, copper, zinc, metal, tin would be able to be exploited by private landowners, in which case Sir Carberry Price was able to start developing this chance discovery up at Bolcherascaid here. And that place was called the Welsh Potosi. And Potosi is was the largest and most productive silver mine in the world in Bolivia, in South America. So the Welsh Potosi was established in mid-Wales. It was the first industrial mining village ever to have been built in mid-Wales in 1698. And today you go up there now and there's nothing but a pile of rubble left of this first mining community that was built to house 200 miners about 2,000 feet above sea level. And that Welsh Potosi is quite an evocative place, to say the least. So one of the reasons why I've named my latest book after it. So after this huge turning point, we have mass immigration to mid-Wales to take a part in this mining industry, which was all of a sudden open to anyone and everybody. We've got people from Cornwall, we've got people from Derbyshire, Yorkshire, we've got people from Scotland, got people from Germany again, Italy, Scotland again. So the main way that these mines were promoted, because private companies started popping up all over the place to start mining on an industrial scale, was the Mining Journal. This was your Saturday morning newspaper that landed on your breakfast table. And it was a way to promote the mines all across the world. But this is the best source that I've ever come across in studying the mines of mid-Wales, because we've got weekly reports here on what's going on, what sort of people are living here, what the mine managers are up to. It's an absolute gold mine, for want of a better phrase. So some of the names which were concocted to promote these mines were quite funny, quite extravagant. We've got mines such as the Welsh Broken Hill, named after Australia, the Welsh Potosi, there it is, Silver Hill, Silver Bank, all sorts of extravagant names like this to try and push shares towards investors in London that would never even see these mines. They would just see a name like, Wheel Fortune or something like that and think, yeah, I'm going to buy 200 shares in that company. Thank you very much. And unfortunately for them, quite often those companies would actually collapse. Now, the reason being, if we remember what I was going on about at the beginning, those veins, those lodes are very, very unpredictable. You don't know how much ore is going to be in there. So this plan here, this section that I drew last year, this was a culmination of a long explore or a long project to survey and document one mine in particular. It's a random choice that I picked. And it shows how, if you look in the middle of the diagram, you can see there's large cavities, some large chambers right there in the middle in that section where the ore was actually quite productive. However, in the little tunnels and levels that go left and right from there, they didn't find anything. Where that large cavity, that large open area is, oh, brilliant, we'll form a company. There's tons of ore here. However, you drive 5 feet in either direction and it's all gone. And that was the downfall of many of these companies. So it's a good little case study to show. Only about a third, maybe a half of the mines in mid-Wales, as productive as they were, actually ever turned a profit. And that is quite a significant percentage, really. Same goes for this one. Here's a historical section of the Cwm Rheidol mine near Devil's Bridge, where the shaded in areas actually shows where the ore was worth extracting. Everywhere else, it's not. So if you think of the expense that went into driving these long levels, east, west, all up and down the mine, just for those little pockets of places. And it was often said that the ore from the mines in mid-Wales was too rich to leave, but too poor to get out. So it was just sort of borderline whether or not you made a profit out of it or not. Yet the mines that did make a profit really did make a profit. That was the thing. That was the catch. If you bet your money right, you got really, really productive veins under these hills. So let's look again at the people. As we move into the 19th century, this was the real boom period of mining in mid-Wales. The first half of the 19th century was what I like to call the mid-Wales Industrial Revolution. It came a little bit after the rest of the UK's industrial revolution. So I've chosen three people here, three significant people in the industry. We've got Captain Matthew Francis of Goginan on the bottom left. We've got Captain James Raw of Cwm Rheidol, middle, and then Robert Northey of Goginan on the right, standing with his hand on the ladder. Now, these are three very successful mine captains, mine owners, that ran their own mines in Mid Wales, made an absolute fortune out of it. And none of them are Welsh. So we've got James Raw was from Derbyshire, Matthew Francis was from Cornwall, and Robert Northey was from Cornwall. So most of the mine managers in Mid Wales actually came from either Derbyshire, Yorkshire, or Cornwall because of the already established mining industries in those areas. Most of the labour, the workforce, were Welsh. However, we do have a huge amount of specifically Cornish and Devon, people from Cornwall and Devon moving to Mid Wales as well. Many of them would come with the mine captains. They were very loyal to the mine managers, to the mine captains. The mine captains were like a father figure, if you like. There were no labour unions. There was nothing like that at all in Mid Wales. As a rule, the miners, dare I say, were actually quite content with their work, which is kind of hard to believe when you think about it nowadays. However, back then, the only alternative was agricultural labouring, which would bring you about a quarter or a fifth of what you'd get for mining. And as mines go, these are some of the best, healthiest mines you could hope to work in, because you haven't got methane, you haven't got black damp, you haven't got fire damp, you haven't got hydrogen sulfide. There's no deadly, poisonous, inflammable gases underground. Silicosis, risk of dust was kept to a minimum because of good ventilation. So the miners were very loyal to their managers who looked after them. And if, Matthew Francis was coming up to Mid Wales, as he did in 1834, then he brought an army of 500 Cornish miners with him, who all settled in Mid Wales. There was even a village built for them near Devil's Bridge called New Row, a whole village built by Francis specifically for his Cornish miners, and a chapel to boot as well, a Wesleyan chapel, such as not been seen in Mid Wales before. The Cornish miners brought the Wesleyan branch of Methodism with them. Up until then, it was mainly Calvinistic Methodists or nonconformists. So these men were very, very influential, not only in how, economically viable their mines were, but in the social impact as well. By the end of the 19th century, around the turn of the 20th, this is a typical view of how Mid Wales would have looked. This is downtown Trysant, would you believe it, which has about 5 houses in it now in the middle of nowhere. And it looks like some valley in South Wales or something in this picture. This was the Vaughan shaft, and it was sunk to about 900 feet deep, one of the deepest in the area. However, that is barely scratching the surface when you compare these mines with some of the tin mines down in Cornwall, which would easily be 2,000 feet deep, going out under the sea and everything. But these mines in Mid Wales were always very shallow. And that was mainly because lots of these veins actually died out in depth. You'd get very, very rich, high amounts of ore near the surface. But the deeper down these shafts were sunk, the deeper down they went along those veins, the amount of ore would actually fall off quite commonly. So that's just one of the reasons why these mines never really got that deep. However, we got a clear Cornish influence here, right slap bang in the middle of this picture, the Cornish engine house with that big chimney on the end of it. You go down to Cornwall and you'll find about 10 of those every square mile in some areas. So not only did the people come from Cornwall, but the architecture came from Cornwall, the technology came from Cornwall, and the machinery came from Cornwall. Cornish pumps were used, Cornish steam engines were used, Cornish engine houses, Cornish gunpowder magazines. So Mid Wales really became a sort of mini Cornwall, if you like. Even the terminology was Cornish. And that terminology that came up with the Cornish miners had gotten to Cornwall's mines in the first place through that county's shipbuilding industry. That's why we have mine captains and mine pursers and gunpowder magazines, because it's all a very nautical themed vocabulary, because the Cornish miners got it from Cornwall's shipbuilding industry, the Welsh miners got it from the Cornish miners. So it's interesting how language and terminology migrates with the people as well. However, like all good things, by the early 20th century, the mining industry was really on its last legs in Mid Wales. It was facing foreign competition, mainly cheaper imports from open cast operations in South America, even North America, Australia, New Zealand. It just wasn't economically viable to continue mining in Mid Wales. It was cheaper just to import the stuff. So, except for the First World War, when the price of zinc specifically shot up and lots of mines, such as the Cwm Rheidol mine right here, were reopened just for the war efforts with government assistance and government finances, most of the mines in Mid Wales had closed by the 1910s, 1920s. The very last one closed in about 1935. So that there is a very concise history, crash course on the actual chronological story of mining in Mid Wales. So that out of the way, I'd like to look now on actually how these miners worked underground, what their lives were like, and then we can move on to what's left of their legacy today. We cast our minds back to those early levels again. Let's have a look at those. So the earliest depiction of a miner in Mid Wales is on the coat of arms of the Society of Mines Royal in 1568. That's the guy there on the left. Looks very Roman. So this could well be a German miner, as were many of them during that time, illuminated by an oil lamp suspended from the ceiling, using what's known as GADs, G-A-D, two of them, one in each hand. And these are basically point-ended chisels that you hold like a hammer. And that was how you cut your coffin level. In very primitive times, obviously, they would use stone hammers and antler picks and such. But by this time, just before gunpowder came into common use, they would start using these gads or any kind of metal hammers, really. I'm holding one right there in that picture on the right that we found underground. Lots of these tools and implements are still left in the mines. A lot of what I'm telling you is stuff that we've found underground. There's no written records as such, but we can fill in the empty pieces or fill in the empty bits of the map by this underground research, this underground social study, if you like, which is always quite exciting, interesting. Even right up in the 19th century and the early 20th century, the miners were still using candles, largely tallow candles made out of sheep fats. And that's what we've got on the wall here on the left. Took that picture last year. They're still there, and they're about 200 years old. Little candles made out of sheep fats, stuck in balls of clay on the wall. And that's all they would have had. The miners had to pay for their own candles. So that money was deducted from their wages. So they wanted to use as few as possible just to see what they were doing. So they'd leave a lot of them underground. We'll use them again next week. The mine closed. They never came back. They're still there. Oil lamps were used sparingly. There's one right there on the right. Very uncommon, though. Normally, candles. From about 1650 to about 1700 onwards, we've got the advocation of gunpowder, or pylor, as the miners know it. And in Welsh, pylor just means powder, or powder, basically. Pylor. And that stuff was carried about naked, as it were, not in cartridges or anything like that. It was just naked powder in flasks, such as those you see there on the left. They would use long powder chargers, like a long spoon, to feed that powder into the back of the drill holes that they chiseled out by hand. They didn't use pneumatic drills originally. They would have to chisel out 3-foot deep bore holes in the tunnel every day, 3 foot deep, about 6 of them. And then they would feed that gunpowder into the back of the hole, block the hole up with sticking, you can see in that tin there, and then pop in the fuse, and then bang, just before the end of the shift. They would then leave the rock to settle overnight before coming back at the beginning of the next day, the next shift, clear away the rubble, examine the face to see if there's any ore there, what's going on, which direction do we go, and then you drive your next round of shot holes. The picture on the right shows the advocation of the rock drill, which came in from about 1850, 1860 onwards. A little bit late, really, to have a huge impact in Mid Wales. Most of the mining industry had already been and gone by the time that these rock drills came into use, running on compressed air more than anything. But some steam-powered ones were used as well. By the time that the ore was actually found productive, you're driving your level along, and that ore is actually starting to produce more than your money's worth, it's worth getting it out, you start stoping. And right back at the beginning, going on about the stope is your working chamber. So we have two pictures here, a stope in Mid Wales and a stope in Cornwall, and you can see just how similar they are. Same people. The one on the left there shows how when that course of ore goes up high above your head, they would just mine and mine and mine, get everything valuable out. And the higher up that stope goes, you put in a stull, which is a platform, that wooden platform, like a scaffolding. And then you would make your way up the stope from platform to platform, higher and higher and higher. And the picture on the right in Cornwall gives a good indication of how that would have looked actually being worked, because we unfortunately have no pictures of a working mine underground in Mid Wales that shows this. However, you can see the miners with the candles, tallow candles on their hats, felt hats known as tulls, no helmets or hard hats or anything like that, with wooden ladders giving access to each of the stalls in the stope. The ore gained from the ceiling is then passed down through a series of chutes into a wagon, which you can see sitting on the rails there at the bottom, and then that is then trammed out to the surface, out of the mine. In more primitive mines in Mid Wales, you could have wheelbarrows being used. We've found some very nice specimens underground recently, a particularly early one from the 1840s. That's coming on for 200 years old now, still in absolutely mint condition, left underground in Henwolch mine. And this is identical to wheelbarrows that you can find in Derbyshire. And of course, if we think back once again, miners came from Derbyshire and Yorkshire. So they brought their own methods of working with them. They brought their own tools with them. They brought their own wheelbarrows with them. So just by exploring underground, it can give us a good indication of what people worked here, where those people were from, and what sort of working methods they would have had. It's more than just scrambling around in a hole in the ground. It's a genealogy lesson. So the mines that weren't quite so cash-strapped could use wagons. The best example of these that we've found is this 1830s example at Cwm Rheidol mine. This is a particularly fine wagon, entirely wooden, except for that amount of metal work on the frame on the left there and the wheels, obviously. But it could only hold maybe half a hundredweight. It's a tiny little thing running on rails only 14 inches wide. But it's come from part of the mine that was worked during the 1830s by the miners from Yorkshire. So that one's even closer to hitting its 200th birthday, and it's still there underground. We've got some more generic pictures of wagons here that we found as well, and a picture of a horse actually hauling one of them out of Bullglass mine near Talabont in 1912. As far as photos go, historical photos, this is pretty much the best you can hope to find. This is my favorite picture, historical picture of any mine in Mid Wales. It has everything in it. So once that ore is trammed out of the mine, out through the level, out through the adit to the surface, the next step is, what do you do with it? So you have to separate the valuable stuff from the waste, separate the ore from the waste, crush the ore down into a powder or a concentrate. And then that lead powder or copper powder, or whatever it is, that concentrate is then bagged up in Hessian sacks and then sent off down to Swansea, down in South Wales, to be smelted. No smelting was done in Mid Wales after about 1830, because the scale of the smelting industry in Swansea was so large by that point, cheaper just to ship it down there and let them deal with it. So the people that traded with the mining companies were smelting companies. They didn't sell straight to the consumer. They would always be like a middleman. The smelting man would be there in the middle. So on the surface, you've got the guy on the top, the upper railway there, pushing his wagon back to the left. That comes from the entrance of the mine. Then you've got the men underneath that first building on the top level, raking ore out of that little doorway onto what were known as the picking tables on the level below. And you can see there's 2 or 3 children standing by that table under the shed, 8, 9 years old maybe. There's a girl on the left, a boy in the middle, and maybe a teenager to his right. This is the only known photograph of children working at mines in Mid Wales, of which there were hundreds. Children would start from about 7 or 8 normally, working in that very spot on the picking table, wielding 10-pound sledgehammers for 12 hours a day, mashing down rocks on a wooden table all year round, 6 days a week. Women would have to stay in this place their whole life. Men, once they got to about 13, were allowed to start working underground with their fathers. The miners all worked in family groups, and it was once again a Cornish method of working, known as tributing. And tributing mainly consisted of peace. It was like piecework. It was like contract work, where the miners were set various contracts from each month, where David Jones and family would have this bargain, this contract for the next month, and the company would pay him maybe 16 shillings for every ton of ore that he got out the mine, dressed at the dressing floor. So he and his family would have to produce as much ore as they could from that part of the mine that they were given on contracts for that month. So it became an art. And the miners liked this because it gave them their own power. They weren't just paid a flat fee, like a minimum wage sort of thing. They were paid if they got that ore out of the hole. So what happened quite often was, say now you've got John Jones working in his bargain all month and he finds absolutely diddly squat. And then on the last day of the bargain, he might cut into a huge course of ore. He would keep it quiet, not tell anybody. Then when the contracts are being set for the next month, he would get a really good price for that bargain because no one else would bid against him for it because they all thought it was worthless. He could then go back and he's got a whole month there to rake in the cash. So it was a very popular way of working. And miners in mid Wales, many of them actually got quite rich during the first half of the 19th century. It's easy to think of miners as these poor, people living in poverty and all that. And oftentimes it was. However, when the industry was at its height, it really wasn't, which is an interesting little orthodox, really. So I'm hoping that you all agree with me that so far the mining industry in mid Wales and its people were very significant to the industrialization of the UK and well deserving of having the history recorded. And over the years, there have been a few books written on the mines in mid Wales. We've got Lead Mining in Wales by W.J. Lewis, big book down there, which is a general observation of mining in the whole of Wales, not just in mid Wales. And then we've got the small pamphlets here, the Old Metal Mines of Mid Wales booklets that were done, once again, a very brief overview. But right back when the mines were going, the people there at the time were saying, like Absalom Francis, it appears to me that a history of these mines was never so much needed as at present. So this history needed to be recorded. However, if we look at what the big sort of Welsh social historians have written, this is what they actually say about mid Wales at the height of that industry. For example, a community of land hunger and inching self-improvement, or communities almost wholly composed of small peasants, small traders, and proletarians. So there's clearly a huge gap here in the historiography. Mid Wales has not been represented whatsoever in the, by the great sort of social or labor historians of Wales, if you like, which seems to me rather inexplicable. That we've got books and books and books and books on coal miners in South Wales, books and books and books on slate miners up north, but virtually nothing on a large scale on the mines and miners of mid Wales and where did they come from and what legacy did they leave behind. So that's what I'm trying to change, basically. Change that consensus, raise the profile of the mines in mid Wales and their people, and try and show to the world really why mid Wales deserves to be known for its cultural heritage, for its industrial heritage. So that brings us nicely into the last bit of the talk, which for me is the most exciting bit, which is looking to the future. So my plan is, in a nutshell, to establish a museum of Welsh metal mining in mid Wales, which would showcase not only the industry, but the people connected to it and everything else connected to it. Because we have a national slate museum in North Wales, there's a national coal museum in South Wales, but absolutely nothing in the middle. So an example of why we need such a museum, about 3 or 4 years ago, more than that, 2018, 8 years ago, I got home from work one day and a local farmer had been over to the house and he left this lot on my kitchen table. So An abandoned house down the road was being cleared out because it was bought by new owners, and they found this in the cupboard under the stairs. And what we have here is the original Rheidol United Mining Register from 1882, with the name of every single miner who worked at that mine handwritten in there. We've got letters from Pennsylvania written back to family members living in mid Wales who'd emigrated out to Pennsylvania in 1910. We've got memorandums, we've got diaries, we've got photographs, we've got account books, all dating from the late 1800s, early 1900s. They'd been sitting in this cupboard under the stairs for nearly 100 years. So there's a wealth of archive material out there that I'm slowly gathering. You know, people are donating, or I'm finding it here, there, and everywhere, that I'm building up to create this collection, this archive of mining in mid Wales. So the next thing I want to talk about is this, which is even cooler. Exploring underground in 2019, a mine just north of Aberystwyth, another coffin level mine like this. And we found this primitive looking wooden shovel on the floor. The picture, the upper shovel, not the one on the bottom, the one on the top. So this immediately looked quite primitive and quite old because it was just sitting on the floor this level, and presumably been there for years. Entirely wooden. So, and as you can see, only about 3 foot long. It looks like a big salad spoon. So we were wondering straight away, what in the world is that? What would you use that for? And it looks quite primitive. And I found this photograph, the lower shovel, the more complete one. Now, this was found in the 1860s at a mine only 5 miles away. So I thought, oh, there's another one. And this was found in the 1860s. And it was said then that this is probably medieval. It could be medieval. It could be pretty old. I'd agree with him. So I sent a chunk of that upper one that we found to the radiocarbon dating lab. And the date came back 4 BC to AD 71. So that thing that was sitting on the floor of that mine is over 2,000 years old. And it was just sitting there in the water. So we have here a late Iron Age / early Roman shovel. The Romans arrived in mid Wales about AD 70, AD 74. So just before the Roman occupation. So straight away, we've got that thing conserved. It's now been conserved professionally, and it's ready for display in the museum whenever that happens. But it just shows once again how much unloved history is just lying about the place that nobody's really done anything about over the years. And in a way, it's a great way to showcase how you can stumble across archaeological finds like this. This shovel, I've since found out, is the earliest wooden mining tool ever found in Wales. And there it is. There you have it. It also gives weight to other claims of Roman mines in the area, such as that other one. You may ask, well, what happened to the other one, the one from the 1860s in the bottom of the picture? Well, unfortunately, that one was burned, would you believe it, by the wife of the miner who found it, thinking it was firewood. You could make it up. So this is now the only shovel we have left. And it's, it doesn't look much, but it's very, very, very important. And it's definitely earned its place in the in the museum. So here's the new and improved map. I think it's up to date now. I haven't actually triple checked it, but it is pretty up to date, I think. So Penpompren mine, that blue dot just above Talabont, that's where that Roman shovel came from. And then, so we've got confirmed Roman mine there. And then if you look right down the bottom, there's another blue dot now near Cwm Rheidol, below Pont Edward there. We found another Roman mine last year at Cwm Rheidol, which was an entire field that the farmer had been ploughing, and up came some smelting slag in the plough, and we got that dated, charcoal dated, and it was about AD 70, AD 80, something like that. So we got Roman mines popping up all over the shop. And what we're trying to do now is to keep them recorded, adding them to the database. I'm still writing my books and whatnot to show this work that we're doing, to showcase this work that we're doing and what it's eventually leading to. Underground, further to that shovel, the main endeavor that we're doing at the moment is trying to access mines which have not been accessed for over 100 years. These time capsules which have been preserved. We open them with landowner permission. We go in, we record everything that we find. We use those artifacts to learn more about the story of these people and these mines. And then eventually we will close the mines back up again to prevent, we all know what happens when things get out on Facebook and stuff like that, don't we? So I and my colleague have a YouTube channel where we put our explorations and our finds out there for the public under anonymous titles. We never give locations away and we never show the surface. We only show underground. And this is proved to be a great way of gaining support. It's called Lost Mines. If anybody's interested, if you type in Lost Mines on YouTube, all of our videos are there. And we post all of the places that we go there, and we've gained a pretty good following across various countries now, which is really nice to see people taking an interest in mines in Mid Wales. Some of the most daring adventures have been abseiling down to the bottom of these mines. This was the Glogvawr engine shaft in January 2020. This was 700 feet vertical down the old shaft to the bottom of the mine. You can see my friend up there at the top of the rope. And all the miners' ladders were still in place, like you can see in that picture on the right there, dating from the 1850s. These were installed by Cornish miners who were working at those mines under John Taylor and Sons during the 1850s. And at the bottom, we've got some Cornish boot prints to go with them. Hobnail boot prints that have been there completely undisturbed in the mud, fossilized in the mud, that have been there for 150 years. You step in those and they're gone forever. It's just in mud. You know, you step on there and they're gone. It's because not a single soul has been there since those miners left. We've got the clay pipes, little tobacco pipes, with tobacco still inside them. We've got wagons on the rails. Some of them even still have ore loaded inside them. So these places are genuine time capsules where we can go in, record everything, photograph everything, and then add that to our database of information, as it were, and then eventually publish the photographs in books or on the YouTube channel. Another example here, more pictures of the sort of conditions that we tend to encounter when we're underground. Very impressive mineral formations that we find as well. It's not all about artifacts. You can quite often find some pretty impressive stuff for geologists or mineralogists underground as well, in places that have been left undisturbed for over a century. Wheelbarrows, explosive boxes, luckily with no explosive left in them. An explosive box there on the right. However, if you look at on the far right of that bottom picture on the right, there's a little metal tin. Look at that little tin, and then there it is, the exact same tin. So we've got a photograph of the miners at Cwm Rheidol in 1910, and then underground at Cwm Rheidol 110 years later, there's that guy's lunchbox still sitting there underground. Get past these. And then even further are when we find engravings. You can find out a huge amount about these people when you've got all of their engravings, miners' engravings, carved, even in cursive writing underground. In this case, they even have their addresses on them. We've got R. Evans, Pen Cnwch, Cwm Rheidol right there on the left. So go back to our photo. Here they are. Here's all the miners at Cwm Rheidol in 1910. And luckily, the last one of these men to be alive labeled this photo with the name of every miner. So there we go. We can put them all together. So we have John Evans of Pen Cnwch, Cwm Rheidol, a photograph of him, his own handwriting underground, and his census return. So you put all of these things together and you can build up a database, if you like, of these miners, where they came from, who their parents were, who their spouses were, who their kids were. You can get there. It just shows how underground exploration is not all just about seeing, you know, how tight a hole you can squeeze your body through. It's about family history, it's about social history, and it's about industrial archaeology. Some more finds there, examples of the sort of stuff that we find underground. Some children's boots left as a good luck offering, tally sticks, lunch boxes, and clay pipes. So the last thing I want to talk about is this, and this was the latest, probably my most exciting sort of the most exciting thing that we've ever found. And I don't think I'll ever be able to top this one. This was last year and came across this map in an archive office not far from here. Pretty generic looking map, 1830s, showing a mine somewhere in mid Wales. And it has a water wheel underground. If you look about halfway down on the right hand side, is a little water wheel. Now, having a water wheel underground was not that uncommon, but this one was half a mile in, and it was built in the 1830s, which is very early for a water wheel underground, by candlelight, entirely in situ, in pieces. It was brought in pieces and assembled underground by candlelight. So we set off on a mission last year, which took us about 5 months of work to try and find this water wheel. So there are 2 underground water wheels known in the UK, or there were 2 underground water wheels known in the UK to still exist. And these were from the 1880s. So should we find this thing, it'd be pretty cool. It'd be the oldest one for sure. And at about midnight on the 16th of March last year, we dug through this collapse and we found it. So that there is the oldest underground water wheel ever found anywhere in the world. And it is also the largest wooden, entirely wooden water wheel ever found anywhere in the UK. As you can see, the axles, the axle boxes are iron, but the axle itself is a huge block of wood, and the wheel itself, very medieval in appearance, is quite literally just kind of chocked in against that axle. It's not even bolted together. And that thing had stood in complete pitch black darkness for nearly 200 years. And then we dug through this collapse, we crawled through, I shone the torch up, and then wham, there it was above our heads. We had to climb up to get to it. And that there is an absolutely astounding piece of engineering. The oldest known wooden underground water wheel to survive intact anywhere anywhere in the world that I know of, in one piece, that is, in one piece. So there we have it. That was just another piece of the jigsaw filled in to show why Mid Wales really, really, really deserves to be known for its pioneering technology and industry. Sadly, on the surface, most of what we see today is general destruction. It's very sad, partially because of that lack of interest and that lack of historical documentation. Many of these mines have just deteriorated over the years, and they have no protection, they have no designation or anything whatsoever. And to this day, this month, sites are being bulldozed. Trees are being planted all over them in carbon offset programs. It's heartbreaking to see these places being destroyed in what should be now the age of preservation. This is what we see. Buildings being demolished. These were the Cornishmen's barracks at Aberystwyth, absolutely smothered in the 1990s because they were a danger and they looked ugly. So just flatten it to the ground, why not? And we've got all of the mines anywhere near farms tend to be full of scrap iron, full of rubbish, just used as a general tip. However, what we're trying to do is to turn that round on its head and actually make people want to celebrate what we have here rather than just erasing everything. Through writing books, through doing the YouTube channel, through working towards this museum, I'm hoping that over the years we'll have less of that and more of this in actually learning to appreciate what we have and to celebrate our forefathers and all the people from various parts of the world who lived, worked, and died here. So I'd like to finish off with the picture of the footprints in the mud. They've been there for 150 years. They'll be there for 150 more, lest we forget them. Thank you very much.
Wow, we're stunned. Thank you very, very much. I know that we have a few people here with ancestors in these areas, especially Goginan.
Yes.
So I'll open it up to some questions.
Hi.
Absolutely.
My name is Susan Jenkins Mears. My Goginan family was Roderick, Roderick.
Oh.
Is that right?
Yeah.
and they were lead miners. And I'm not sure of the name of the mine where they worked, but they lived in Gogeen in Melander and Cornish Row.
Did they really?
Yes.
Yeah, no Cornish Row. Yeah.
I have them, the censuses. There were 5 brothers and some sisters, and all but the oldest son came to America in the 1860s, where they pursued mining in the Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania area.
Ah.
My great-great-grandfather was one of the lead miners, and I've always been curious because in his history, it tells that he went to Spain for
Right.
3 years to teach the Spanish government how to sink and where to sink mine shafts. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, there was one of the mine managers who lived in Goginan, Matthew Francis. I showed his picture some while ago.
Right.
He
Yes.
went on several trips to Spain, and he also went to South Africa as well, I believe, to survey mines over there or to show them how to survey. So it's interesting to see that, especially both of them being from Goginan. Goginan was probably the main mining town in mid Wales. Out of all the villages and various mines here, Goginan was kind of the center. That was where all the mine managers were based. The main mine at Goginan, the Goginan mine, was one of the richest. I'd imagine that would probably be the one where your ancestors would have worked because it's right there near Cornish Road. But that's interesting about him going out there to Spain.
Yes, and it was during the Civil War, which probably puts the date on it.
So the Civil War, so 1640. Cornish Row wasn't built then, though.
1860s, the
The-
US.
Oh,
Civil
the
War.
American Civil War. Yeah. The English Civil War was 1640s.
The Spanish, how about the Spanish Civil War?
Yeah, that would have been. Oh,
That was in
you
the
got me on that one.
1990s.
Yeah.
So, my name's Diane. I'm related to Susan, descended also from the Rodricks in Goginan,
Uh-huh.
and have the same story about the Spanish. But one thing I want to point out that Susan and I believe he's an uncle of both of us, a great uncle. James Roderick ended up as the superintendent of mines for the entire state of Pennsylvania in the 1890s.
Wow.
And he was serving in that position when he died, I think 1916.
Wow. See,
So,
I
and he
forget
was,
which
I
mine.
think he was the youngest brother that came over. So,
Yes.
Right.
and I'm descended from the oldest brother who stayed in Wales.
Wow. There's a Roderick's level at one of the mines south of here. I forget which mine it is, but there's
Ooh.
an adit called Roderick's level at a mine. I've heard that name before, and I'm trying to remember which mine. It's not Goginan, but it could well be another mine which the family at least would have had connections with. I think it's down. Do you know Llandir Mwyn? It's kind of down near Llandyfri, kind of southeast of Aberystwyth. There's some big mines there, and I'm pretty Roderick's level is down that neck of the woods. Yeah.
Very interesting. And you talk about Cornish Row as if it still exists. Is it still there?
Nah, it's a pile of
No.
rubble, I'm afraid. Yeah, I've been there. The back wall of the cottages is still there, but everything else is gone. There was Cornish Row, there was Gilbertson's Row, there was English Row. There was a bunch of them, but they're all gone now, unfortunately. Yeah,
But you know the location of it.
absolutely. Yep, to the inch.
I was fascinated with the map you showed first.
Mm.
And I'm wondering where we can find a copy of that. And if you can pinpoint where Cornish Row is for me on a map, I
Yeah.
would love that.
So the map is in my second book. There's 3 books. My second one, there it is. That I'm going all over the place. The map is in my second book, which is actually called the same thing as this talk. So I'm going to go back to the title slide. If you want to write down the name there, and if you Google that, the book will come up. There we go. Worn by Tools and Time.
Okay.
Not the second line, but if you Google Worn by Tools and Time, Ioan Lord, it should come up. And they
Okay.
should ship. I would have thought they should ship to the States.
Okay.
Yeah. And that map is in there with a bunch of a more detailed history etc. So that's the name of the book with the map in it. On the map itself, so see Goginan right there in the middle, the green dot.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's on the east side of Goginan. I'm trying to think. It's a bit too zoomed out. Do you have access to, or do you use the old Ordnance Survey maps, which are available online?
Yeah, I can't remember if I've looked at those or not.
There's a website. It's the National Library of Scotland, actually. National Library of Scotland. They
Oh,
have
yeah.
their 6-inch Ordnance Survey maps. If you go to the first edition, 1886, first edition Ordnance Survey maps on that website, go find the one that has Goginan on it. They've got a zoomable map thing that you can zoom in on the website. Find the Goginan one. Cornish Row is on the sort of northeast side of Goginan village, right up close to where the mine is.
Okay.
You'll see where the mine is, and then Cornish Row is there. If you
I
have
was-
trouble, you can email me and I'll send you a picture with it on.
Now,
I was in Goginan back in my very first trip, which was 30 years ago. I had a drive, and he took me to Goginan and the little village, Dollwen, Dollwen.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just down a lane.
Mhm.
And then there was not much in Dollwen. That's where the chapel is, where
That's
they're
right.
buried.
They're buried, yes.
Yeah,
And
that's it. There's 2 abandoned chapels, aren't there, opposite each other?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And then
Yeah.
just beyond that, there were a few row houses still standing.
hmm
And the driver encouraged me to knock on the door, which I did. Now, this is 30-something years ago. And a very lovely young woman invited me in. And we kind of supposed that those were remainders of that Scottish Row or Cornish Row and houses where the miners would have lived.
At
Yeah.
the top of the lane on the main road there,
Mhm.
there's an old pub,
Druid.
Yes, throw it in.
the Druid Inn, and opposite the Druid Inn in the little parking area, there are there's information boards about Cornish Row, which we read.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you go down that hill there, back down
Yes.
to Dolmen,
Yes.
and then you take the road over to Old Goginan, which is kind of over on the other side of the valley, on the floor of the valley, where there's a few scattered houses, and
That's where-
Cornish Row was over there.
That's where
Oh,
Blind Different is, right?
Yeah, that general direction. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because see, Blind, doesn't that say
Blind
Blind
Different?
Different?
Manjafrin. Yeah.
This curve in the main road there.
Yes.
When we were over there 2 years ago, we stopped at this point and took pictures because
looking back, yeah.
my the Roderick's other family is Edwards, and they were from a farm or the farm
Blind
of.
Different.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So that would have been Diane, that would have been your Edwards too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, when we were, I'm trying to think what year it was. My kid was about 5, so it must have been like 1994. We actually got into a lead mine in Goginan, but I don't know where it was, or I couldn't find out anything
that
about
would
it
have been-
later.
Yeah, was that the old what used to be the Silver Mine Museum?
But it is no
with
more.
the underground tours.
Yeah, this wasn't, I'm trying to think, it wasn't underground. It was like on the level and there was nobody else there. It was like abandoned.
Yeah.
I have no
That
idea.
could have been yeah, there's so many of them around there. It could have been it could have been any of them, I guess. Yeah. But there's so many mines around there that are just kind of standing there. Lots of the buildings are all still there as well, just derelict, like Aberystwyth. It's like a
Yeah.
moon. Yeah.
We
But,
also visited the Ceredigion Museum, I think in Aberystwyth.
Yes.
Which the upper floor has a pretty good few artifacts and things. Not a
They
lot
do.
of
They have a few things. It's annoying because they have a huge amount of material, but they only display maybe 1/50th of it in a dingy little corner.
Wow.
Right.
It's not been
Yes.
upgraded for about 30 years. So that's why I want to I've now got between 200 and 300 artifacts that have been donated or loaned or that I've found or whatever. So rather than giving them to an existing museum, I thought I kind of want to start fresh.
Yes.
And serve as a permanent repository then if anyone else has any stuff, because everything I have will be on permanent display, whereas everything that goes to Ceredigion is kind of stashed away in boxes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I have all of my ancestry comes from Wales, and it's kind of half and half between Mid Wales and South Wales. But I want to ask you, have you presented to or have you been in touch with the Ceredigion Family History Society?
Yeah, I've done a few talks for them over the years. Yeah. I forget who it was I was talking to or who I was corresponding with, but yeah, I've done a couple of talks with them. Yeah.
Well, don't stop now because they can use you.
I'm hoping that once the museum is, because I work on the Vale of Rheidol steam railway, which goes from Aberystwyth to Devil's Bridge.
Yes,
It's a tourist railway now, but it used to be for the mines. So I
yes.
work there, and they publish my books for me. So we've got a really good relationship there, and they're going to provide me with a building for the museum.
Oh, fabulous.
So yeah, so it'll be in the station at Devil's Bridge, but since they haven't got the grant funding yet, it's not official yet. So don't go telling everybody yet because they don't have the money yet. But that's the plan. So once that's done and when it's actually happening, I'll do a lot of sort of contacting people and organizations such as the Family History Society. Now this is actually happening, and try and kind of raise interest as it's actually happening. You know what I mean? So and then anyone who has any stuff that they would like to loan or to display in that museum can come forth then, can't they?
Right. Yeah.
I
So.
have my great-grandfather, Richard Roderick, when he came to this country, he ended up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and he was instrumental in determining where mine shafts should be sunk. He was a contractor, a private contractor. And one of the things that he had was an antique secretary piece of furniture. And I am fortunate enough to have that piece of furniture in my house.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was, my father inherited it from his grandfather. And he never had room for it in the small houses we lived in. So it stayed in the family home, the Jenkins family home in 44. And when that house was sold from my aunt to a cousin, she said, there's this ugly piece of furniture in the attic that's supposed to belong to your father. If you don't want it, it's going to the dump. So my husband at the time and I drove off to Pennsylvania in our station wagon and brought it back to Connecticut. And he spent the winter restoring it. So it's a very special piece, but it did originally belong to Richard Roderick, who was born in 1834 in Gogenen.
Wow. And what does it look like? Can you describe it? It sounds amazing.
It's well, I don't know if you know what East Lake walnut furniture is, but it's typical of the 1870 style furniture that was very popular in America. And it's a roll top. It has a drawer crossed underneath the roll top, and then it has two doors that open on the bottom. And on the top is a bookcase with glass doors. It's a very imposing piece of furniture.
Yeah. And that would have been in Goginen then when
No,
it was.
it was purchased in America, but by a man who was born in Gogenen,
By him.
on to be successful in America.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well.
Actually, his brother James, who became the state head of mines,
Yes.
he had the same desk, because one of his granddaughters contacted me after I put a picture in a Welsh newspaper here in America that he had exactly the same desk.
Ah, well.
Must have been reminiscent for them or something.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about your talk, a couple of notes I made. In the Taliban mine, which is a very small mine, and you said it mirrored one in Germany.
Yes, yeah.
To be that small, did they only children were down mining?
No, so it is quite a bit of a common myth, should we say, that children were kind of sent down on their own when they were 5 years old and that sort of thing. But actually, these levels, it's easy to think so, looking at the size of the levels. But they were simply made that way to save manpower. They only made them just big enough for one man to kind of stoop his way in there and out again, carrying the ore in a basket on his back. Because they had to chisel every inch of it out themselves. They didn't want to make it any bigger than was needed, hence the shape of the coffin, the shape of a person. They didn't want to spend any more effort than they needed if they were going to hand chisel all that lot out. So that explains that.
Second question is about the water wheel. So down in the depths that was found, was there water?
So as soon as you get below river level or whatnot, then yes. However, all of these mines are made to drain. So you'll have an adit at the lowest level possible above the valley floor that climbs at a gentle gradient like that drains everything out from the mountain above it. So since it was half a mile in, but it was half a mile in the upper level. So the wheel itself, everything's bone dry because everything drains down to that bottom level and then drains out to the surface. So the mines are very technologically advanced in that way, in that you did have to pump to something. That's why the wheel was there. It was to pump the levels further down below the valley floor. But as long as you're above the drainage adits, above the valley floor, and that water can naturally drain out, those mines still function pretty well hydrologically.
So the water wheel was there to as a draining.
It was to operate a pump.
Move the water out.
Yes. So it operated a pumping rod, which went down the level and down into a bucket pump in a shaft, which was sunk below the bottom level. So that wheel turning would operate this pump that went up and down in the shaft, and then basically pump the water out of the shaft into that drainage adit, and then it just trickles out to the surface.
Wow.
I have one more question. You said there's a Roderick level in a mine near there, and I didn't get the name of the mine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Hang on, I'm going to check before I give you it. I'm pretty sure I know which one it is, but bear with me a sec. On my external hard drive, I think I'll have it down.
You're in your car as opposed to being in your office.
I know. I was explaining at the beginning that my Wi-Fi went down, and it's just like everything's a bit all over the.
Oops.
Uh-oh.
Oops.
And there he went.
He'll come back. Oh.
How are you, Diane?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I just arrived at the lake yesterday and I'm sitting in the only chair that is clean. I got a lot of work to do, but it's beautiful.
Susan, this was absolutely fascinating.
I know, wasn't it? Amazing.
Oh my gosh, every minute of it.
I know. I have
right.
Copper miners in Anglesey, and I have nobody down in this area, but wow, fantastic history.
Yeah.
Susan and I and a few others of us went to the Ceredigion mine in, Ceredigion Museum in Aberystwyth. So if you're ever in Aberystwyth, you should go there because they have quite a lot there, but they did have this corner all about
lead mining.
Just lead, right? Lead and tin, or just lead mining. Yes.
Wow. You should try to see if he can come over for half hour.
Good idea.
As a presenter. Oh my. Plus it might help promote his
that's
fundraising and his books.
If he comes back on, we can you can mention that to him if you'd like to. And I don't know whether he knows what NAFAO is, probably not, but
But he could go from Nafau and Springfield, and it's only a short trip to Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, where there was a very strong Welsh mining population.
Oh, looks like he's coming in again.
I think it's him. Yes.
There he is.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we
Yeah.
can. Yeah. Yes.
There we go. Just to add things to the mix, the laptop decides to die, so there we go. It's my day. Anyway, sorry about that. What were we talking about?
The name of the Roderick.
Oh, the Roderick. Yeah. What I'll do, yeah, since the laptop's died, I'll check when I get home, and then I'll send an email with the information in it that I can find.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
you.
while you're still on, Jan had an idea which I want her to explain to you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, okay. Every year we have a North American Festival of Whales, which you may or may not have heard of. And it's put on by the Welsh North American Association. And so we have presenters come and do seminars, and we have musicians, and we have a whole lineup of things. And if you go online and look for Festival of Whales, you'll find the website and you'll find out what's going on for this year.
Okay.
But I have coal miners from the south. I have roots in Llanwren, which is nearby Corus and Machynlleth and up there. But I was totally fascinated every minute you were talking. This is so interesting. So I would suggest you as a presenter, for Springfield, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2026.
In
2026, it's going to be in
2026.
Springfield, Massachusetts, which is about half an hour from me.
So, I just wanted to I just thought of this. Oh my gosh, it would be fascinating. Put the idea out there. It'd be interesting, for anyone anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Plus, at that, I don't know where you are in your progress of your museum and so forth, but it would give you a little bit more visibility. And with your books and the museum and the fundraising and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
So I'll get your contact information from Susan.
Yeah.
And I know Susan is on the committee for that for 2026.
Yeah.
Cool.
Actually, I think she's the contact person. She is the person. And then we'll start to get the wheels rolling on that.
Brilliant.
If you can come over. So yeah, because I know, like this topic is good. I don't know if you have another topic that you related to that you talk.
And I could do this, and I could do the railway, because since I do have a big interest in the railway, since I work there as well, the railway, the steam railway, and that's related to the mines as well. So it could be something not just the mines, but the railway, the wider picture,
Oh yeah, So okay, well we'll
keep in touch on that.
Yeah,
Great,
very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's quite exciting, everything that's going on now, and cross fingers with the museum, and then hopefully we'll get there. Yeah.
So what's your means of support for yourself? What's your main
So,
job? The railway?
Yeah, my main job is the railway. So when the train's running, because it's a tourist railway now, so when the train's running, I work as a fireman or a stoker. So I shovel the coal with the driver. But then I also work as a guard or conductor. And then when the trains aren't running over the winter, I'm writing a book. They've commissioned me to write a book on the history of the railway. So I do that over the winter, 5 days a week. And then in the summer, then when the train's running, I'm out on the trains. So it's a nice little balance there, really. So that's my day job, as it were. And then I do all of the mine exploration and write the books on the mines in my spare time then.
Oh, spare time, huh?
Spare time, yeah, the little amount that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Head Roxanne.
My people are from South Wales. I'm pretty sure a couple were miners. Do you know anything about the mines down there?
Only that there was a huge amount of them. They were on a much bigger scale than the mines in Mid Wales.
Okay.
Yeah, so lots of the miners from Mid Wales migrated down to South Wales when the mines here closed. But South Wales was a very urban setting as opposed to the rural surroundings of Mid Wales, a completely different atmosphere there.
Oh, okay.
And many more people working there and immigrating there as well. There was a large Jewish population that was established down there, which wasn't seen in Mid Wales. It was very much more of a more of a diverse population even than Mid Wales by a long stretch, really. Bigger industry on a larger scale. But the reason
Okay.
I focus on Mid Wales is because there's so many books out there already on South Wales. I'm trying to fill in the gaps, if you see what I mean.
Right, right.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Do you know where in South Wales?
Yes, I can't pronounce it though.
One of the valleys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
I'd
but no,
have to look it up to see, I can't pronounce it.
Mine was Ostergunlice.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
My
Quite a
mom
few
was born.
Mid-Walians went down there.
Yeah, my mom was born there, so
Ah, there we go. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a first generation. Yeah.
There were quite a lot that went to the Rhondda valleys from Mid Wales. There was also the Tredegar area, Treorchy, Treharris, that neck of the woods. Yeah.
Yeah, her mom was from Cumaman, so
Mm,
mining in Cumaman.
yeah.
Aberdare, Cumaman, yeah.
That's it. All that. Yeah.
Could
There
I
we go.
ask two DNA questions, just out of curiosity? I don't know. I have Welsh ancestors from Wisconsin. I really don't know that much about anybody being a miner, but I'm curious for something you just mentioned, and that my nephew, Dave Jones, did show up. Both my sister, we were raised in a Welsh settlement, so all our ancestors are Welsh, and my sister and I can turn out with 96 or 98% Welsh. So my sister married a man who is the same thing, from a different part of the state, 100% Welsh, I think. We don't know about him, he's passed away. But his son, his oldest son, did show up with a Jewish component.
Ah.
And I'm curious, that family was from South Wales and what they called the borderlands, I think. Is that right? I'm not sure, but someplace down there. And they came as farmers and the name was Peter Williams. But I'm curious if that Jewish component might have come from that heritage.
Yeah, it could have. Because when there were lots of riots in South Wales in the early part of the 20th century, when the labor unions were growing, and lots of those riots were against the Jewish population there, of which it was quite strong. There was a large Jewish population in South Wales, so it could well be through that avenue there of that proximity. There was no Jewish population in Mid Wales to any extent. It was in South Wales, the urban centres of South Wales, Merthyr Tydfil, Tredegar, those big towns, Aberdare. So yeah, that's quite possible actually.
Could the Germans that you had mentioned in your talk have been Jewish as well?
Could have been. However, with the German population, they stayed here for a relatively short time, really, and then they went back. The last immigration from Germany, it was Germany and Italy. They came over together. Was in 1900, and the Welsh miners in the area, one of the very few times they actually rioted against them because they were taking their jobs. They were actually sent. They escaped back to Italy for their lives because the Welsh miners were actually setting charges of dynamite off outside the barracks at the mine.
Oh,
So
nice.
they actually ran for their lives, and they never darkened the doorways of Aberystwyth again.
What about the early Germans? Would that be why German ancestry is showing up in this DNA of our members?
It could be, yeah. They didn't stay much more after about after the English Civil War, so 1649. They wouldn't have stayed any later than that. But yeah, could be. Yeah.
Well,
quite a lot to go. But
hey, I think it's time we let you go. I'm sure you've got lots to do, but
that's
looks
all
like,
right.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
No,
Great
pleasure. Sorry
presentation.
about
Amazing.
the rather casual surroundings here,
Oh,
but
no problem, no problem. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch again.
absolutely.
you.
I'll check out the Roderick name and I'll pop you an email. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
wonderful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
And
keep in touch.
could we get the titles of the books? Or how
Yes.
we could get the books?
So one of them's out of print, so I won't bother with that one.
Oh.
But the first one, the small book, is Worn by Tools and Time. So if
Mhm.
you put that and my name in on Google, it'll come up. The second one, which is, in my opinion, the better one, is actually called The Welsh Potosi. And that's Potosi, the Welsh Potosi. So if you Google either of those with my name, they should come up. And the Welsh Potosi is a lot more detailed, lots more information in there. And it's got lots of maps and surveys and pictures and diagrams and this and that and the other things. So that's the one that I'm happiest with anyway, put it like that. And they do definitely ship to the States, 100%, because that's the railway that published that one. So
What about the book that's out of print?
that one is called Rich Mountains of Lead, but you won't get it anywhere. That was
Oh,
also
yes,
the
you can get
railway.
it maybe on Books as a
Oh, okay.
used
Yeah.
book.
Have a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is it?
Yeah. So
Rich
that's Rich Mountains of Lead.
Rich Mountain of Lead.
Yeah.
And we might see you on the train in September.
Oh, you're coming over?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, let me know when you'll be there, and I
Okay.
might be driving.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, and if you want, you can always buy the books then, because they've got stacks of them in the shop on the railway. So you can always, I can sign it for you then if you want.
Hey.
Perfect. Great.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
So,
Thank you so
excellent,
much.
yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, pleasure, no problem at all. Keep in touch, and then we'll sort something
Will
else out
do.
at some point.
We will
Yeah.
do. Thank you very
Nice
much.
one.
Thank you.
Okie dokie.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
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 Wow.
Well, now I need to start planning a trip to Wales.
That was really good.
That was
Yeah.
excellent.
Excellent. Really good. Yes. Let me stop the. Where's the recording?
That was, I have to say, and I'm sure it's because it was a personal thing for me, but that was the most interesting and exciting talk that
Yeah.
we've had.
Well, you